Photography allows me to know more about some part of the world, or some existence, or some fact. I mean, photography for me has been a way of trying to understand India. That was in my first. It has a way of trying to understand New York. It has a way of trying to understand women, and trees, and sculpture, and my family, of course. And so it is a way to understand. The metaphor is probably the main instrument of poetry, at least of the poetry that I am sensitive to. And for me, the only thing that's interesting in photography is a metaphor. It's not showing something, it's making think of something. A photograph that just shows something seems to me pretty uninteresting. The picture I did of Chanel is one of my best known and most sold and most published and whatnot. And I've never seen her. And of course, never spoken to her. I had some assignment to photograph her défilé, her fashion show. And she had a contraption of a stair with a lot of mirrors. So from that stair, she could watch her défilé, her show, without being seen. And I just happened to stand on the bottom of those stairs and see her through those mirrors, and I took that photograph. And of course, she was considered a beautiful woman when she was young, and at that time she must have been 75 or something. So she didn't particularly care to be seen. Well, I don't think she noticed me taking that photograph anyhow. I wasn't a celebrity photographer at all. This was more or less done by accident. For one thing, I was pretty shy. Well, for the other thing, what I was never able to do, I'm still not able to do it, is to have a photographic sitting where I ask you, sit there, no, turn a little more that way, now please smile, so please don't smile, and so on. Directing people for a photographic sitting makes me feel very, very ill at ease. I just caught something that I saw, which is what I've always done in photography, with the interesting exception of fashion photography. Because in fashion photography, of course, I was directive. I had to be directive. But even when I was directive, I always tried to arrange things so that something would happen. And the good photographs are always the photographs where something happened that I didn't direct. I couldn't care less about the dress, I cared for the accident. New York was heaven for me, and hell also. I came there for the first time at the end of the 50s. I had a great love affair there, and I came mostly for that love affair. But then it became a love affair with the city. It's not just love, it can be love and hatred alternatively. And I mean, New York is always a place where you get exhilarated or depressed. And that's why I called my project New York Up and Down, meaning uptown and downtown, and meaning all the ups and downs that you have in New York. And New York, I decided to photograph in color with just one lens, and much more on street level than up on the skyscrapers, or maybe on subway level. It's more intimate. It's a feeling in the street. It's that feeling of pressure and of exhilaration that you can have in New York. Now, almost 30 years later, or 25 years later, no, almost 30 years later, the photographs mean something else than what they meant when I took them. And that's, of course, an interesting point about it. I had a thing about trees. I had just bought a property in the south of France where there were trees, and when I go back to my trees, I touch them. And I like when they touch me, when I pass under them. They're olive trees mostly. You know, when I was a child, I was a very lonely child, and I was playing alone in this big garden we had on the Adriatic. And so the trees were really my playmates. I would imagine them as horses or as fortresses or whatever, dragons. So I had a kind of relation to them. So the only thing that interests me now, when I look at the photograph, is who is this man who photographed? When I was young and went to India for the first time, I thought that I was photographing about the subject India, but that's long past. India, when I left, it was like being separated of a great love. And then I came back, and every time it was a bit of a disappointment. You know, India and modernity and the contemporary world don't go terribly well together. When I went to India first, it was like going back to the Middle Ages or to antiquity. So I felt moving in time for 2,000 years. And that was so marvelous. Now when they all have their mobile phones, it's not the same thing. I would say that the truth is a very important question to me. But the truth in photography, just as elsewhere, is not a mechanical truth. The truth is the fact that the witness believes what he's witnessing. That's the truth. It's not a machine. There's no machine to witness of the truth. If you trust Frank Horvat, then what he shows you is true. And if you don't trust him, it's not. Photography is the art of not pushing the button. Or la photographie est l'art de ne pas presser le bouton. What I don't photograph kind of accumulates in me, like a desire to photograph. So not pressing the button means accumulating some energy or some desire which is unspent and which may come up next time. When photography will become everyone's medium, it will be even more elitist. Because to do something that stops you and that interests you and that you remember, you have to be a good damn better.